Watch until 5 o'clock this afternoon. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan, for keeping us posted on that. Now we're going to hand it down to Steve, who's downstairs. Hey, Steve.
All right, Ainsley, thank you. Switching gears, peaceful activists or political rioters? When it came to protests during the Kavanaugh confirmation process, mainstream media saw it this way.
Protesters both for and against Kavanaugh's confirmation are making their voices heard.
And you can see a few protesters up there. It's sort of an act of civil disobedience.
There was nothing violent about these protests.
One of the principles of our democratic process is that protest is patriotism, and they're showing that every single day with that courage.
That courage. But compare that coverage to the coverage of Tea Party protests about 10 years ago.
This is a party for Obama bashers, and I think this is not really family viewing.
Do you think that there are racist elements in the Tea Party?
You've got these guys going around acting like street thugs. I mean, it isn't far from what we saw in the 30s, where all of a sudden political parties started showing up in uniform.
Okay, a little different. Here with a closer look at this media bias, Saagar Enjeti, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. Saagar, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So the folks in the last couple of weeks who were protesting Kavanaugh, patriotic, courageous, civil disobedience, but when the coverage came to the Tea Party back in 2009, street thugs, racist elements in the Tea Party, things like that. Why the double standard?
Yeah, you really could not see more of a stark difference. And it really is because a lot of the sympathies for these protesters are held by some of the reporters themselves. And there really was an active effort to cast them in the best of light. They made sure not to cover the most extreme elements. Anybody who was here in Washington knew that there were some really violent threats. All you had to do was spend a little bit of time on Capitol Hill and see how the members had to be surrounded at all times by police in order to keep them away from really some of the most violent people that received only coverage from places like at the Daily Caller.
What do you make, though, of the imagery? You see all these people. Some of it is violent. Some of it's certainly noisy. No problem with that. But then you see Ted Cruz getting run out of a restaurant, things like that. And then you've got the Republicans, in some cases, referring to this as mob rule. Is that appropriate?
In some cases, it certainly is. I saw a few people trying to actually say that a mob did not drive Ted Cruz out of a restaurant. I watched that video. He was quite literally surrounded and separated from his wife in a Washington, D.C. restaurant. I've seen members unable to get into elevators, members who are unable to get into their cars without being accosted. It's a terrible time here in D.C. And part of the real scandal here is that they are not receiving any real critical coverage. And in many cases, they're actually receiving positive coverage, which only emboldens them.
Well, and you look at the coverage regarding President Trump. The Media Research Center did an analysis. We got it over on the big board. Coverage 92% negative. So perhaps that does shade what the manner in which some of the mainstream networks do cover this administration and politics in general.
92% isn't surprising. What's even more interesting in that study is that the thing that got the most coverage was actually the Russia investigation, which is something, if you look at the polling, that people care about the least. I'm in the White House briefing room every day, and from where I stand, there are a lot of people who are much more interested in impressing the people around them by asking about the Russia investigation than in delivering the actual news that the American people care about.
Well, and according to a Media Research Center, between June and September, the Russia collusion investigation on the networks got 342 minutes, and then followed by immigration with 300, Kavanaugh fight close to 300 as well. But then the administration's economic achievements got 14 minutes. Not much.
Really? Yeah, not much at all, especially when the economy is under a fundamental transformation, that we have a new trade deal with Canada and Mexico. These are things that affect the lives of millions and millions of people, and it deserves a lot more scrutiny.
Absolutely, and it would be nice to get some publicity so people know what's going on. All right, Saagar, thank you very much for joining us live from our nation's capital.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, meanwhile, it turns out the Supreme Court didn't blow up during Justice Kavanaugh's first day on the bench yesterday. So what was it really like? We're going to try to take you inside with what we know. Plus, millions